Every watch fortress is a light in the darkness, a blazing watchfire that drives back the shadows in which the Xenos lurks. Without their illumination, the Emperor's worlds would be swallowed up one by one, bound into shrouds of endless night stitched close by alien claws.
In the grim darkness between the stars, alien horrors abound. They skulk in the void and in forgotten corners of the galaxy, plotting mankind's doom. Most citizens of the Imperium will never know how close they come to annihilation at the claws of these Xenos monsters, because an elite brotherhood of warriors fights a secret war on humanity's behalf. In the shadows, they strike with ruthless precision, quenching nascent alien threats before they can engulf entire worlds. They are the Deathwatch, the Emperor's shield against the alien, and his vengeance made manifest in the darkness. The founding of the Deathwatch. It began in an age of desperation. The Imperium was reeling in the 32nd millennium during an apocalyptic conflict, remembered as the War of the Beast. A colossal orc warlord, known only as the Beast, had united the greenskin hordes like never before and launched an invasion that brought the Imperium to its knees. Whole sectors burned. The Imperial Fists, chapter of Space Marines, lost thousands of battle brothers battling the orcs, and even Terra itself, humanity's throne world, was threatened by monstrous attack moons hanging in its skies. On Terra, amid the ashes of failed counteroffensives, the highest authorities of mankind gathered in emergency council. Lord Commander Courland, chapter master of the Imperial Fists, and last of his line, stood before the High Lords of Terra, his armor scarred from recent battles. At Courland's side was Inquisitorial Representative Vienand of the Ordo Xenos, the faction of the Inquisition charged with combating alien threats. They had come with a bold proposal born of pure necessity. Courland's voice echoed through the somber chamber.
Conventional armies and open war have failed,
he declared, gauntleted fists clenched.
The Beast laughs at our massed assaults. We need a new strategy. Surgical strikes, kill teams of Astartes targeting the alien leadership and weapons. Assassins in power armor, striking where the Xenos least expect.
The assembled High Lords murmured in uncertainty. The notion ran against the grain of standard Imperial doctrine. The Space Marine chapters were proud and independent forces, not readily mixed or fragmented. One aged High Lord raised a trembling objection.
Such informal battle groups, outside the bounds of the Codex Astartes, it smacks of desperation, and to draw Marines from many chapters, unorthodox, who would lead them, under whose authority would they operate?
Inquisitor Vienand stepped forward, her eyes flashing.
Under our authority, the authority of the Holy Ordo Xenos,
she answered. A hush fell. It was a calculated compromise. The Inquisition would oversee this joint force, ensuring loyalty and unity, while the Space Marines provided their most veteran warriors. Courland met Vienand's gaze and gave a grim nod. He understood that without the Inquisition's backing, the plan would never gain the High Lord's approval.
I will relinquish sole command of this new force,
Courland announced,
if that is what it takes. The Inquisition shall have purview, but we must act. Now, too many worlds have fallen already. If we do nothing, Terra itself will fall to the Beast.
After tense deliberation, desperation forced the High Lord's hand. With the Orc Empire closing in, they assented to Courland's plan. Thus, in the crucible of crisis, the Deathwatch was born. Veteran Space Marines from a multitude of chapters were hand-picked for this perilous duty. Many were the sole survivors of units shattered by the orcs on Ulanor and other battlefields. Battle brothers who had lost all their squad mates, their home chapters mourning heavy casualties. These hardened survivors swore new oaths, pledging themselves to a vigil that would transcend the bounds of any single chapter. In a quiet chamber deep beneath the Imperial Palace, lit by flickering candlelight and the crimson glow of the Inquisition seal, the first Deathwatch kill teams gathered. Armor that had once been proud blues, reds, greens, and golds was repainted a somber matte black. Only the left arms and one shoulder pauldron remained unmarred, polished silver engraved with the Inquisition's sigil of a stylized skull and eye. On each Marine's other shoulder, they kept the icon of their original chapter, a reminder of their lineage and a badge of honor they would never fully discard. The air was heavy with incense and oaths of momentous import. Watch Commander Asker Warfist, a grizzled Space Wolf hero chosen by Corland as the first leader of the Deathwatch, paced before the assembled warriors. His footsteps rang on the stone floor. Warfist's voice was a deep growl reverberating through the chamber.
"Brothers,"
he addressed them,
"you have been chosen because you are the best your chapters have to offer, and because you have experience. You have seen worlds burn. You have buried brothers and slain monsters that would break lesser men. Now you stand together, united by a greater calling."
He gestured to Inquisitor Venand, who observed from the shadows, and to the massive chalice of oath paper before them. The Apocryphon oath. One by one, each Space Marine stepped forward to stamp his chapter's seal and name onto the oath roll, swearing to uphold this new brotherhood until the enemies of the Imperium were vanquished.
"From this day,"
intoned Inquisitor Venand solemnly,
"your watch begins. You are the Deathwatch, the shield that guards the Imperium from the alien. The Emperor's Long Vigil falls to you, now and forever. Do you swear to accept this duty unto death?"
Each Marine slammed a fist to his breastplate in salute.
"By the Emperor's will,"
they answered as one.
we so swear.
As one, they spoke the credo that would come to be dreaded by Xenos across the galaxy.
"Suffer not the alien to live."
In that ritual moment, the Deathwatch was truly founded. A new Space Marine chapter unlike any other, answering not to any one realm or Primarch's lineage, but to the collective survival of humanity itself. Their first mission followed swiftly. Even as the ink dried on their oaths, alarms rang through the palace. An Orc attack moon still hung over Terra, bombarding the world with meteors and roving kill cruisers. Conventional forces had thus far failed to neutralize this artificial moon weapon. Now the freshly forged Deathwatch kill teams received their baptism of fire. Warfist wasted no time.
"Brothers, to arms!"
he barked, sliding his ancient helmet over his scarred face. Inquisitorial acolytes hurried to load specialized war gear onto Thunderhawk gunships. Melta charges, void-hardened boarding torpedoes, and strange ammunition inscribed with purifying sigils. Within the hour, 3 kill teams launched toward the Orc attack moon. As their dropship rocketed into the void, a veteran of the Ultramarines, his blue armor now overpainted black, clutched his bolter and murmured a battle prayer. Across from him, an Eagle Warrior's Devastator checked a launcher loaded with heavy magma bombs, while a White Scar's Assault Marine revved the engine of a chainsword inscribed with new litanies of hatred for all Xenos. They were strangers from distant chapters, yet now brothers in arms on a mission no one else could accomplish. The assault was a thing of ruthless beauty. Guided by intelligence from Ordo Xenos savants, the Deathwatch insertion pinpointed a weak point in the moon's defenses. They smashed inside the hollowed planetoid and fought through corridors of crude alien metal. Emerald Orc eyes widened in confusion and fear as warriors bearing unfamiliar black armor and silver arms tore into them with disciplined fury. These were not the gleaming Ultramarines or raging space wolves the greenskins recognized. These were silent, methodical reapers in the dark. Watch Commander Warfist personally led the charge into the reactor chamber at the moon's core. Towering orc meganobs in clanking mega armor barred their path, but the Deathwatch moved with coordinated precision. A Kill Team veteran from the Mortifactors chapter hurled a clutch of grenades modified to emit searing ultraviolet pulses, momentarily blinding the orc brute's sensors. In that blink of an eye, a Swordbearers veteran darted in and sheared a meganob in half with a two-handed power blade, while a Lamenter's heavy gunner put disciplined bursts of mass-reactive bolts through the eye slits of another. The orc guards fell, gurgling alien curses. Reaching the reactor, Warfist slammed a mag-locked melta-charge onto the pulsating power core of the attack moon. The device began to hiss and glow, primed to unleash a sun-hot plasma bloom.
Mission accomplished.
Warfist voxed calmly.
Deathwatch, exfiltrate now!
The kill teams extracted in good order, dragging with them 2 wounded brothers and the lifeless body of a Crimson Fist who had fallen during the push. There was no time for elaborate rites. The fallen would receive what honor could be given after escape. Moments after their gunships disengaged from the moon's surface, the melta charges detonated. A chain reaction turned the orc attack moon into a blossoming fireball above Terra. Searing debris rained harmlessly into the upper atmosphere. The threat ended at last. From the high parapets of the Imperial Palace, Lord Commander Courland and Inquisitor Venand watched the alien moon die in a silent flash. Courland allowed himself the barest grim smile. The Deathwatch's first trial by fire had been a resounding success. Shortly thereafter, Courland marshaled the might of the Imperium for one final great crusade against the Beast on Ulanor. In that campaign's final act, the new Deathwatch kill teams joined Imperial forces for the assault. Small, hand-picked squads of black-armored killers slipped behind enemy lines on Ulanor to sabotage gargantuan orc war machines and assassinate war boss lieutenants, weakening the Beast's armies from within. Though Courland himself would fall in that battle, the Orc Empire was broken. Humanity had endured, and the Deathwatch, born out of that desperate war, had proven its worth beyond any doubt. The Apocryphon Conclave. In the aftermath of the War of the Beast, the wisdom of maintaining a permanent force like the Deathwatch became obvious. Xeno's threats, after all, were ever-present and endlessly varied. Thus, what began as an ad hoc strike force was soon formalized into a lasting chapter of Space Marines. A secret convocation was called on the dead moon of Orphyte 4, a gathering that would pass into legend as the Apocryphon Conclave. Here, away from the eyes of the wider Imperium, high-ranking Inquisitor lords of the Ordo Xenos met with chapter masters from many Space Marine chapters. It was an unprecedented council, proud Astartes commanders in brightly colored power armor standing across from black-robed Inquisitors, all brought together by a single concern: the growing number of alien threats assailing mankind on all fronts. For days, these mighty leaders debated under flickering lumen globes in the Grand Basilica of Orphyte 4. Skulls and skeletal remains of long-dead alien beasts hung from the vaulted ceiling as mute testimony to the Xenos menace. Some Inquisitors advocated for extreme solutions: the total annihilation of all alien species wherever they were found, a war of xenocide without end. Others argued a more pragmatic stance, that certain lesser Xenos could be contained or even used as tools against greater threats. The Space Marine chapter masters listened in silence to the Inquisitors' deliberations, their expressions unreadable behind helmet eye lenses or beneath furrowed brows. At last, one of the chapter masters, legend holds it was the master of the Ultramarines, though records are apocryphal, raised his hand for silence.
Enough.
He growled, the single word cutting through the arguments.
We did not come here to argue philosophy. We came to find a solution.
It was Chapter Master Jareth of the Nova Marines who stepped forward next, removing his helm to speak plainly.
The solution is before us. We saw it in the War of the Beast. The only effective answer to the Xenos is vigilance, an eternal watch by the best of our Adeptus Astartes, guided by the knowledge of the Ordo Xenos.
He looked to his fellow Space Marines.
No single chapter can fight everywhere at once, but together, sharing our strength, we can be the gatekeepers against the alien.
Inquisitor Lord Atreus of the Ordo Xenos nodded slowly.
A joint chapter, drawn from all chapters,
He mused.
owing its allegiance to the survival of mankind as a whole. A Deathwatch to stand guard over the future.
The gathered leaders deliberated a while longer, but now the path was clear. In the final night of the Conclave, by unanimous agreement, they enacted the solemn founding of the Deathwatch as a permanent chapter. Each chapter master in attendance pledged a sacred tithe. From that day forth, they would offer warriors to serve in the Deathwatch's ranks. These warriors would be freed from their normal duties and seconded to the Ordo Xenos for as long as needed. A year, a decade, a century, even unto death if required. In return, the Inquisition vowed to uphold this brotherhood, to equip it, support it, and above all, to trust in the honor of the Space Marines who served. In the cold dawn after that long night, the oath was sealed. Space Marine and Inquisitor drew blades together and cut their palms, mingling blood and drawing an oath mark upon a great adamantine tablet.
Let this mark the pact between the Adeptus Astartes and the Ordo Xenos,
intoned Inquisitor Atreus.
We are bound by our duty to the Emperor and the survival of his realm. Together we form the shield that slays, the Deathwatch, which shall endure from this day until the end of days, if that is what fate requires.
The chapter masters spoke in unison.
We pledge our finest to the Long Vigil. The Deathwatch will stand guard against the doom that comes for us all.
The Apocryphon Conclave's work was done. From then on, the Deathwatch operated with formal recognition, though to the wider Imperium it remained a shadowy rumor, its deeds known only to a few. A unique brotherhood. Thus, the Deathwatch became a standing chamber militant of the Ordo Xenos, akin to how the Grey Knights serve Ordo Malleus and the Sisters of Battle serve Ordo Hereticus. But unlike those organizations, the Deathwatch is not composed of a single lineage or cult. It is a patchwork of heroes from innumerable chapters, all colors and creeds united in purpose. A Deathwatch kill team might consist of a son of Ultramar, fighting shoulder to shoulder with a space wolf from Fenris, a dour dark angel standing alongside a zealous black Templar, even a brooding blood angel or a tech-obsessed iron hand, warriors who, under other circumstances, might be rivals or have little trust in each other. Within the Deathwatch, however, they set aside old rivalries and differences. They must. Their missions leave no room for discord. The result is a melting pot of tactics and traditions. In the mess halls of watch fortresses, one might hear lively debates between battle brothers about the teachings of the Codex Astartes versus the virtues of primal ferocity or strict monastic ritual. Yet when the alarm klaxons sound, these same warriors form into seamless squads, each Marine bringing the best of his chapter's expertise to the table. To join the Deathwatch is a great honor. Typically, when an Inquisitor or a Deathwatch watch captain identifies a particularly skilled or experienced Space Marine during a joint operation, a formal request is made to that Marine's chapter master, a request that the battle brother be seconded to the Long Vigil. Some chapters view this as a sacred duty. The noble Ultramarines, for instance, have a long history of contributing officers to the Deathwatch. Indeed, one of their own, Chaplain Orton Cassius, famously formed a Deathwatch team in later years. The Crimson Fists, masters of fighting orcs, likewise supply many veterans. Other chapters are more reluctant. After all, they are giving up some of their best warriors for an indefinite time. But even the proud and independent must bow to the Apocryphon oath their own masters swore. When the Deathwatch calls, a true son of the Emperor answers. One such answer came from the Salamanders chapter on Nocturne. Veteran Sergeant Daktir was a hero of his company, known for defending civilian evacuees during a Drukhari raid. When an Ordo Xenos Inquisitor sent word that the Deathwatch had need of a flame-wielding, close combat expert to cleanse Xenos nests in the reaches of the Eastern Fringe, the Salamander's chapter master agreed to dispatch Daktir. Though his heart was heavy at leaving his Drake-haunted home and his people, duty was duty. Daktir arrived at Watch Fortress Thalassa Prime, the primary Deathwatch Fortress Monastery, on a thunderous night of acid rain. He marched off the Aquila lander in full battle plate, bearing his chapter's emerald green and black livery and the burning chalice icon on his shoulder pad. Awaiting him in the embarkation hall was a stern Deathwatch chaplain, clad in midnight black, the only contrast being his bone-white skull helm. This chaplain silently offered Daktir a new shoulder pauldron, one bearing the silvered insignia of the Deathwatch, a skull surmounted by a crossbones, set on a field of black. Without a word, Daktir understood and exchanged his right shoulder plate, with its flame-red chalice of the Salamanders, for this new left one. Next, servitors came forth with brushes and pots of glossy black paint. With ceremonial reverence, they began to overpaint his salamander green power armor. Daktir himself took up a brush to finish the task, painting the aquila on his chest, obsidian, and his gauntlets black as the void. He left untouched only his right shoulder pad, which still displayed the flame-red chalice of the Salamanders. It was his honor to retain his chapter's symbol, to remind himself of who he was and what values he brought to the Deathwatch. When the repainting was done, one of the servitors affixed a polished metal plate over his left arm, the silvered arm of the Deathwatch, marking his new allegiance. The Deathwatch chaplain's voice echoed from the skull helm, intoning the rite.
In the sight of the Emperor, and in his name, you are reborn to a greater chapter. Your past is not erased, but subsumed into our shared duty. You stand now as a guardian against the alien, a sword in the darkness, and a watchman on eternity's wall.
Daktir knelt and repeated the words drilled into him during transit.
I pledge my life and soul to the Long Vigil. No alien shall corrupt the domains of the Emperor while I draw breath. By my aim, let their leaders fall. By my flame, let their nests burn to ash. I am Deathwatch.
The chaplain nodded in approval and offered Daktir a massive two-handed combi flamer, a bolter with an underslung flamethrower, crafted by Deathwatch artificers and engraved with both the Promethean flame iconography of the Salamanders and the sigils of the Ordo Xenos.
"Rise, Brother Daktir of the Deathwatch,"
the chaplain said.
"Your vigil begins."
So it goes for each Marine who joins the Deathwatch. There is no fixed term of service. A Deathwatch appointment lasts as long as the Watch commanders deem necessary. Some Marines serve a single mission, perhaps a year or two, and return to their chapters with new honors and hard-won wisdom, and often a sealed order, never to speak of what they experienced. Others remain for decades, finding a new brotherhood and sense of purpose in the Deathwatch's ranks. In some cases, a Marine might choose to stay permanently, especially if returning home is impossible or undesirable. These latter individuals sometimes become Black Shields. A Black Shield is a Deathwatch warrior who has symbolically erased his chapter identity entirely, usually by painting over or removing his chapter badge, leaving a plain black shoulder plate. Often this is because the Marine's original chapter was lost or declared traitor, or because he has sworn some oath of penance. He sets aside his past to fight only for the Deathwatch. Among their brethren, Black Shields are treated with respect and a touch of mystery. No one presses them about their past, and they seldom volunteer it. What matters is that they are ferociously dedicated to the cause, often fighting as if seeking redemption or death in battle. Many Black Shields become particularly renowned kill team leaders, channeling whatever ghosts haunt them into zealous fury for destroying xenos. In the halls of Watch Fortress Ariok, a bastion hidden in the distant Jericho Reach, an initiatory trial once took place. A new batch of recruits from various chapters had arrived. Among them was one Marine whose armor bore no chapter icon at all, just a pitch-black shoulder where a proud heraldry should be. The others exchanged curious glances. A Crimson Fist Marine muttered to a nearby Ultramarine,
Who is that? What chapter is he from?
The Ultramarine shook his head. He did not know. Their watch captain, a stern Imperial Fist named Galadan, noticed the whispered speculation and addressed them all.
Brothers, before you stands Brother Tiberius. That is all you need know of him. He wears no chapter badge, because from this day, his only chapter is the Deathwatch. He is a Black Shield. His past is his own affair, in the Emperor's eyes. In our eyes, his blade and bolter speak for him. And I will tell you this. He has slain 2 Hive tyrants in single combat, and led the purge of a Genestealer-infested space hulk alone for 6 weeks. You will be honored to fight alongside him. Let no one question his honor or his history. He has chosen to be our brother, and that is enough.
Chastened and intrigued, the recruits nodded. From that day onward, Brother Tiberius was simply one of them. A warrior whose silence about his origins only added to his grim aura. In battle, he fought like a man with nothing to lose, and many a kill team owed their survival to his fearless charges into the fray. Watch Fortresses and the Long Vigil. Once inducted, Deathwatch Marines are assigned to one of many Watch Fortresses, heavily armed void stations or secret strongholds on desolate worlds that serve as headquarters for the Long Vigil in each region of the galaxy. These fortresses are islands of light amid the darkness, both figuratively and literally. As Inquisitor Ishmael wrote, they are blazing watchfires, whose presence keeps the shadow of the xenos at bay. Each watch fortress is commanded by a watch commander, or watch master, effectively the chapter master of the Deathwatch for that sector, though in practice the Deathwatch has no single chapter master across the galaxy. Since Asger Warfist's time, they instead rely on independent fortress leadership due to the vastness of their operations. Instead, each fortress operates somewhat independently, united by common cause but often cut off by distance and secrecy. The Watch Commander has absolute authority to act in defense of the Imperium. If he deems an entire world must be purged to contain an alien outbreak, he can unleash Exterminatus without waiting for approval from Terra. If he needs to requisition troops or ships from nearby Imperial forces, he invokes the inquisitorial mandate of the Deathwatch, and those forces have no choice but to comply. On his order, entire sectors might burn, and often those drastic actions snuff out a nascent threat before the general populace even realizes they were in mortal danger. Within the Watch Fortress, Deathwatch Marines train relentlessly. They study volumes of Xenos lore provided by Ordo Xenos savants, identifying the weakness in a tyrannid bioorganism, understanding the culture and likely strategies of the cunning Toe, memorizing the telltale signs of Genestealer cult infiltration, or learning how to disable a Necron construct's regeneration protocols. A saying among the Deathwatch is, "Know your foe. Only by understanding the alien can you utterly destroy it." This is a mindset not common in the wider Imperium, where ignorance is often deemed a virtue to avoid heresy. But the Deathwatch thrives on specialized knowledge. Its warriors become experts in xeno hunting. In one training hall aboard Watch Fortress Damaris, a group of newly arrived kill team members gathered around a massive hololithic projector. It displayed a rotating image of a Tyranid warrior organism. A veteran Deathwatch tech marine pointed at organs highlighted in red.
Here, the toxin sac. Our apothecaries have confirmed that a mass reactive bolt to this point will detonate the creature's own venom, and here, the synaptic node cluster at the base of the skull. Sever it, and the beast becomes a mindless drone.
The Marines listened intently. Some took notes on data slates, an unusual sight among Astartes, but in the Deathwatch, the more studious chapters like the Blood Ravens or Aurora chapter eagerly compile xenocide tactics. The fortresses also contain extensive armories filled with exotic weaponry not found in a standard chapter's arsenal. Over time, the Deathwatch has amassed specialized tools designed explicitly for slaying aliens. For every bizarre defense the aliens evolve, the Deathwatch finds a countermeasure. There are shotgun shells called xenospurges that explode into flesh-eating gas, ideal for dissolving orc fungus flesh in confined spaces. There are slim, silencer-fitted stalker bolt guns and toxin-tipped rounds for silently assassinating Eldar psychers from the shadows. The famed Kraken bolts, dense adamantine penetrator rounds, can punch through the thick carapace of a Tyranid Carnifex or the energy shield of a tall battle suit. Inferno rounds deliver white-hot chemical fire that immolates a Genestealer upon impact, while Metal Storm frag shells detonate in midair to shower a horde of smaller targets with shrapnel. Each Deathwatch Marine learns to load and use the perfect ammo type for the foe at hand. In the quiet moments before a deployment, one might find kill team members in the fortress arming chambers meticulously selecting ammunition from labeled crates. Cryo shells for a hypermetabolic insectoid species that fears extreme cold, or phosphoric acid vials to burn out the ephemeral forms of a Hrud colony that phases through solid matter. They check out specialized gear, a Corvus pattern auspex with additional multispectrum sensors to spot camouflaged predators, or a pair of lightning claws whose blades vibrate at a frequency that disrupts Eldar force fields. Each piece of kit can make the difference between victory and death on a mission with no backup. The Deathwatch also holds a restricted vault in each fortress known as the Black Vault. Within these arsenals are stored certain heresy-class artifacts, alien weapons and devices captured over millennia, deemed too dangerous or too valuable to destroy. Only the Watchmasters and a few tech marines are allowed to access these. In desperate times, a kill team may be issued a piece of Xeno's technology to turn against its makers. This is not done lightly. The Imperium's creed considers using alien devices heretical, but the Deathwatch is pragmatic. If an Eldar phase blade, a Necron chronometron, or a Jokeiro digital weapon can give an edge in saving human lives, a Watch Commander may authorize its use after strict rituals of containment and sanctification. One famous example, centuries ago a Deathwatch team on a space hulk recovered a Citan phase sword from the corpse of a Kallidus assassin, herself slain by Necron guardians. This blade could phase through matter and ignore all armor. Rather than see it lost or misused, the Deathwatch secured it. Eventually, it was turned over to the Officio Assassinorum's armory for their agents, a rare instance of cross-imperial cooperation, all thanks to Deathwatch initiative. Many radical tech priests of the Xenorite Creed, a faction of the Adeptus Mechanicus obsessed with xenotech, have tried to get closer to Deathwatch vaults, but woe betide any unauthorized meddlers. Stories tell of one incident in M36, the so-called Xenorite Schism, when some tech priests on Forge World Styges 8 secretly bartered with aliens for technology. When this heresy was discovered, the Deathwatch declared war on those tech priests themselves, launching a purge that pitted Space Marines against corrupted Mechanicus forces in a bitter conflict. The Deathwatch emerged victorious, reaffirming that even humans can become targets if they delve too deep into proscribed Xenos lore. Usually, a Deathwatch kill team deploys under the guidance of an Inquisitor, but in extreme circumstances, a Deathwatch captain or librarian may take command of the unit. Either way, once on mission, their word is law, and they can requisition anything they need to complete their objective. They are among the best armed and trained units in the Imperium. They're often sent to war zones where conventional forces would be outmatched or ill-equipped. The arrival of a Deathwatch team is always welcomed by Imperial commanders, even though it's often accompanied by a chill of fear. For those who know of the Deathwatch, understand that their presence means an exceptionally deadly foe lurks nearby. Kill teams in action, armed with knowledge and weapons blessed, or sometimes tainted, by unimaginable power, the kill teams of the Deathwatch venture out from their watch fortresses on missions that border on mythic. Each kill team is a small unit, usually 5 to 10 Marines, custom-equipped for the task at hand. No two missions are alike, and thus no two kill teams are organized the same way. One team might consist entirely of close combat Terminator veterans if they are boarding a Genestealer-infested derelict, while another team might be built around stealth and long-range firepower for infiltrating an Eldar webway outpost. The life of a kill team is a mosaic of intense deployments, punctuated by periods of vigilant waiting. When a Xenos threat is identified by the Ordo Xenos, the nearest watch fortress scrambles their team. Often they arrive unheralded to an embattled Imperial world, strike surgically, and disappear just as quickly. Consider the notorious incident known as the Purge of Ghosar Quintus. In 681 M41, a remote mining colony on Ghosar Quintus went ominously silent. Imperial tithes were missed, astropathic messages went unanswered. The Ordo Xenos suspected Genestealer infestation. A Genestealer cult can quietly subvert a whole world, its victims enthralled by alien hybrids generation after generation, until one day they rise in rebellion and reveal their planet to the Tyranid hive fleets as ripe biomass. Veteran chaplain Ortan Cassius of the Ultramarines had long campaigned against the Tyranid menace and was at that time seconded to the Deathwatch. Sensing the pattern on Ghosar Quintus, Cassius personally led an Aquila kill team to investigate, without even informing his watch commander, so urgent was his conviction. His team, later famous as Kill Team Cassius, included masters from various chapters, each contributing vital skills: a Raven Guard scout sniper, a Salamander's heavy flamer specialist, a White Scars biker with a power lance, a Blood Angel's swordsman with lightning reflexes, an Ultramarines Stern Guard sharpshooter, and more. They arrived on Ghosar Quintus to find the mining cities eerily devoid of human life, but teeming with inhuman activity. Lurking in the depths of the ore processing tunnels and underhives were the misshapen members of the cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. Ordinary miners and colonists had been transformed into devoted servants of an alien brood, complete with extra limbs, chitinous skin, and the unmistakable slavering maws of the Genestealer strain. Cassius and his Deathwatch moved in by night, their black armor ideal for the gloom. In a ruined administratum plaza lit only by flickering lumen strips, they caught a congregation of cultists mid-ritual. The cult's Magos, a bald human host whose eyes were solid black orbs, was preaching to a flock of mutants, promising them salvation by the Star Children, the Genestealer cult's blasphemous gods. Standing behind him, towering and chitinous, was a pure-strain Genestealer Patriarch, its 4 clawed arms spread protectively over its congregation. The kill team spread out silently across gantries and shadowed archways. At Cassius's hand signal, they struck as one. From 3 vantage points, heavy bolters and stalker-silenced bolters rained death upon the assembled cultists. Limbs and alien ichor sprayed the dusty ground. Before the stunned brood could react, the White Scars Marine roared through on his bike, decapitating the cult, Magus, with a swipe of his blade. Pandemonium erupted among the hybrid mutants. The Genestealer Patriarch shrieked in rage, a psychic shockwave that echoed through the warp. It pounced with terrifying speed onto one of the Deathwatch, a Crimson Fist battle brother pinning him. The Marine grappled valiantly, straining to keep the Patriarch's slavering maw from ripping out his throat. Seeing this, Chaplain Cassius bellowed a litany of hate and charged with his Crozius Arcanum, a power mace crackling with blue energy. He swung with righteous fury, shattering the Patriarch's spined carapace in a spray of fluorescent blood. The beast howled and recoiled, releasing its victim. Immediately, the Salamander's Marine stepped forth and bathed the creature in purifying flame from his heavy flamer, the chemical promethium fire clinging to its flesh. Screeching, the alien horror thrashed and finally collapsed, burning from within. When the sun rose over Ghosar Quintus, the Deathwatch had cleansed the main nest, but at heavy cost. Several battle brothers lay dead amidst piles of slain hybrids. Worse, Cassius realized the cult had spread beyond this world. Fragments of data recovered hinted at Genestealer infestations on other nearby planets, a network of corruption extending through the whole segmentum. With grim determination, he reported these findings to the Ordo Xenos and received a stern reprimand for acting without orders, though many suspect the Watch commander was secretly pleased with Cassius's initiative. The Deathwatch would have much work to do in stemming the Genestealer plague in years to come. This operation showcases how the Deathwatch fights, a handful of heroes against an army of the impure, using shock, superior firepower, and sheer audacity to win. There are no reinforcements coming, no second wave. If a kill team fails, entire worlds burn. So they do not fail. In the same century as Ghosar Quintus, the Deathwatch were also engaged in more overt Tyrannid wars. In 745 M41, Hive Fleet Behemoth, the first major Tyrannid incursion, struck Ultramar and the eastern fringes. The Ultramarines chapter fought a desperate defense, culminating in the battle for Macraga, where the Ultramarines' first company was entirely slain holding the polar fortress. During that war, the Ordo Xenos and Deathwatch provided what aid they could, advising on Tyrannid biology and dispatching occasional strike teams to hit Tyrannid vanguard organisms on fringe worlds. It was Ordo Xenos Inquisitor Fidus Kryptman who identified the Tyrannid threat and even gave the species its name. After Behemoth was halted, Kryptman gathered Deathwatch kill teams to chase down Genestealer infestations that heralded a second coming. Hive Fleet Kraken indeed arrived in 993 M41, attacking from multiple directions. In that second tyrannic war, many chapters fought fiercely. The Scythes of the Emperor chapter was nearly annihilated and numerous other worlds ravaged. Deathwatch units saw action at critical flashpoints. On the agri-world of Tarsus Ultra in 997.M41, Captain Uriel Ventris of the Ultramarines, serving a term in the Deathwatch as penance for a previous transgression, joined forces with Deathwatch Captain Bannon of the Imperial Fists to defend the planet from a Kraken splinter. Their combined kill team executed a daring plan. Ventris and his Deathwatch brothers infiltrated behind the Tyrannid lines to eliminate a Tyrannid Norn Queen, the massive brood mother orchestrating the invasion. In the dead of night, amidst jungles writhing with chittering gaunts, Ventress and Bannon led their team into the foul organic tunnels beneath a tyrannid spore chimney. The air was thick with spores and the walls glistened with mucus. The deeper they went, the more the tunnel seemed to pulse as if alive. Finally, they entered the spawning chamber, an immense fleshy cavern where a bloated Norn queen hung from pulsating umbilicals, birthing new horrors by the minute. The sight tested even the hardened Astartes' resolve.
Emperor preserve us,
whispered one Deathwatch veteran, leveling his bolter.
That thing is the size of a cathedral.
Captain Bannon signaled for the use of a weapon of last resort, a vortex charge, a forbidden high-yield device that would tear a hole in reality and drag everything nearby into the warp. While half the kill team laid down withering covering fire on the attending tyrant guard beasts, Ventress sprinted forward with the humming vortex bomb clutched to his chest. Razor-sharp spines flew around him, one impaling his shoulder, but he did not falter. He slammed the device into the slick flesh at the base of the Norn Queen's gargantuan torso and activated the timer.
Go! Go!
He shouted, pain forgotten in the adrenaline surge. The team withdrew at full speed, gaunts swarming behind them in enraged pursuit. Seconds later, a blinding sphere of unlight expanded behind the Space Marines, the vortex bomb imploding. In an instant, the Norn Queen and everything nearby was torn from existence, sucked into a howling singularity. On the surface above, tyrannid creatures went instinctively berserk as their synaptic link severed. Leaderless, they became disorganized prey for the Imperial Guard regiments and Ultramarines holding the line. Tarsus Ultra was saved from consumption, but Captain Bannon never saw the victory. He was mortally wounded covering the retreat, torn apart by a tyrannid lictor that had stalked them in the tunnels just before the vortex detonation pulled it away. Bannon's sacrifice earned him honor in the Deathwatch's annals, and his surviving brothers bore his body back to the fortress, draping his coffin in both the yellow of the Imperial fists and the black of the Deathwatch. Not all Deathwatch missions succeed. There are tragedies and last stands as well. One record from the late 38th millennium tells of an entire company of Deathwatch mobilized to protect an Ordo Xenos Lord Inquisitor named Korsht. He had uncovered a Necron artifact of dire significance, so much so that the Drukhari, Dark Eldar, cabal of the immortality denied, wanted it for themselves. 100 Deathwatch Space Marines stood as honor guard on the barren moon where Korsht conducted his studies. Without warning, sleek, black-hulled raiders and grav skimmers of the Dark Eldar burst from the webway, unleashing a storm of splinter fire and haywire blasts. The Deathwatch fought valiantly, jump-pack Vanguard veterans intercepting Reaver jet bikes in mid-air duels, and heavy gunners blasting skimmers out of the sky. But the Drukhari were innumerable, and their venom-laced weapons bit deep. In the end, they overwhelmed the Astartes through sheer vicious speed and poisoned trickery. Lord Inquisitor Korsht was slain, and the Xenos made off with the artifact. Only a handful of Marines lived to tell the tale, and those were badly scarred by exotic alien toxins. This failure is recorded not to shame the Deathwatch, but to illustrate the stakes. Even the best can fall when the enemy is cunning enough, and the loss of even one kill team is a heavy blow, potentially meaning an entire sector might go unguarded until reinforcements can be found. The Kryptman Gambit. Throughout all these battles, the Deathwatch operates in close concert with the Inquisitors of Ordo Xenos. Often, a kill team's mission begins with an Inquisitor's urgent request or a directive uncovered through investigation. While a watch commander can and does initiate missions on his own, a significant number of Deathwatch deployments are joint operations with an Inquisitor. Usually, this relationship is cooperative. The Inquisitor provides intelligence, strategic direction, and sometimes even fights beside the kill team, while the Marines bring the firepower and combat expertise. But tensions can arise. The priorities of an Inquisitor, driven by politics or radical ideas, might clash with the Deathwatch's more straightforward seek and destroy ethos. Inquisitor Apollyon, a noted Xenos Puritan, once led a Deathwatch team on a mission to retrieve a blasphemous tome called the Necroteuch from a world named Quintus. This artifact was an alien scripture said to grant unspeakable knowledge and power. After harrowing encounters with a Genestealer cult that was protecting the tome, the team secured it. As they prepared for extraction, Apollyon insisted the Necroteuch be sealed and shipped to Ordo Xenos archives for study. The Deathwatch brother captain Sinewolf, leading the team, adamantly disagreed.
That book is an abomination. It should be destroyed now. We have what we came for, the knowledge that it existed, and the ability to deny it to the enemy. Why risk its corrupting influence by keeping it?
Apollyon was incensed.
The Ordo decides what knowledge is kept or erased, Captain.
He snapped.
That is not your decision. Think of the insight we could glean into the Hive Mind's communications from this text.
Sinewolf, helmet off and eyes burning, replied evenly,
The ethics of book learning and scholarship I leave to the savants. But for what it's worth, I would have burned it without a second thought.
Sinewolf's philosophy was simple. Some knowledge is too dangerous. Better to annihilate it along with its source. Ultimately, Apollyon pulled rank as the inquisitorial commander and kept the artifact. But such moments of contention highlight a truth. The Deathwatch are not automatons who blindly follow any Inquisitor's whim. They obey, yes, but they are still Space Marines with their own honor and instincts, and Inquisitors know better than to treat them as expendable pawns. It is a partnership, albeit one where one partner wields a sigil that can declare exterminatus. Some Inquisitors become almost like members of the Deathwatch themselves, fighting regularly at kill team sides, earning the respect of the Astartes. These individuals often bear scars from the same battles, or, in at least one case, accepted minor gene augmetics to better keep pace with their transhuman allies. One legendary figure was Inquisitor Kryptman, who, though a frail human in comparison, carried enormous authority in matters of Tyranid threats. This leads us to one of the most controversial and far-reaching operations in Deathwatch history, the Kryptman Gambit in late M41. By 997 M41, Hive Fleet Leviathan, the largest Tyranid invasion yet, was carving a swathe of destruction up through the galaxy, coming from below the galactic plane. Kryptman, having studied previous Tyranid wars, predicted that if Leviathan continued unchecked, it could consume the vital worlds of Segmentum Solar itself. His first act was brutal but effective. He declared an exterminatus on dozens of Imperial worlds lying in Leviathan's path, a cordon sanitaire of dead planets, denying the Tyranids fresh biomass to consume. Deathwatch teams reluctantly assisted in this horrific campaign, virus-bombing planets, evacuating only a scant few key personnel, and condemning billions of Imperial citizens to death in order to starve the Great Devourer. This move was so extreme that Kryptman was eventually declared excommunicate traitorous by the Inquisition. Many within the Imperium could not stomach such sacrifice, necessary or not. For the Deathwatch who carried out some of these orders, it was a bitter duty indeed to annihilate human populations, even if it was to thwart aliens. They did it grimly, believing it better than letting those worlds be devoured and added to the enemy's strength. But Kryptman's next move was, in some ways, even more audacious. He convened a conclave of his most trusted Deathwatch allies and laid out a desperate plan to turn the Tyranids against the Orcs. In the Orc Empire of Octarius, there was a massive greenskin domain seething with constant warfare. Kryptman theorized that if a tendril of Leviathan could be lured into Octarius, the Tyranids and Orcs would become locked in a brutal war of attrition, each decimating the other, buying the Imperium precious time. To lure the Tyranids, Kryptman needed bait. He tasked the Deathwatch with acquiring live genestealers from a space hulk drifting near Leviathan's approach. Normally, standard protocol would be to purge the space hulk of such creatures, but now they had to capture some instead. So it was that Kill Team Morith, led by a veteran watch captain named Mordegail, boarded the derelict hulk Validus, which teemed with genestealer broods. They moved in silence through dark corridors where the flicker of broken lumen strips illuminated piles of past victims' bones. Using stasis grenades, rare devices that freeze a target in time, they managed to ambush and immobilize an entire genestealer brood along with its hulking patriarch. One battle brother died in the process, eviscerated by a scythe-clawed stealer seconds before the stasis field locked it in place, but the rest completed the mission. They dragged the stasis caskets containing the slumbering genestealers back to their cruiser. With these deadly xenos securely contained, Kryptman enacted the next phase. Under cloak and false transponder signals, Deathwatch vessels penetrated the borders of Octarius. In a daring low-orbit drop, they delivered the stasis capsules of genestealers onto an orc-held jungle world and set explosive charges to wake them. The Deathwatch teams then retreated as swiftly as they'd come. On that world's surface, the genestealers emerged amidst a sprawling orc encampment. Instinctively, they went to ground and began to spread their insidious infection among the orc population. Within months, the Orc Empire of Octarius discovered genestealer cults blossoming in their midst, and as orcs do, responded with exuberant violence. But the psychic cries of the genestealer brood echoed into the void, and Hive Fleet Leviathan, like a predator scenting blood, altered course toward Octarius. When the Tyranids arrived, they found an entire empire of war-hungry orcs eager for a fight. The Octarian War erupted, a grinding, apocalyptic conflict of gargantuan biotitans versus hulking orc gargants, of billions of living hive organisms versus endless green tides of boys. The Deathwatch did not directly participate in that carnage. Their role was to set the fire and watch it burn. And burn it did. It was a horrific war, but it was Xenos fighting Xenos, which to Kryptman and his allies was vindication of the Gambit. The Imperium could breathe easier for a moment as Leviathan's main thrust was diverted. However, the Deathwatch could not stay entirely hands-off. In the thick of the Octarian War, reports came in of an orc big mech, known as King Mech Bad Krasha, who had devised a weapon that disrupted the Tyranids' synaptic control. This crown of lightning he built was allowing the orcs to systematically butcher the Tyranids, potentially meaning the orcs would emerge victorious and stronger than ever from the conflict, which was not the outcome Kryptman wanted. So kill teams from a watch station called the Eye of Octos undertook a near-suicidal raid into the war zone. Using the confusion of the ongoing battle as cover, multiple teams infiltrated Bad Krasha's stronghold. They waited patiently until a pivotal moment when the orc invention had whittled down the Tyranids, but before the orcs could claim full victory. Then the Deathwatch struck. A Führer-pattern kill team, heavy close combat specialists, crashed through the scrap walls of the mech's workshop, drawing the attention of his elite Meganob guards. Meanwhile, a stealthy Venator-pattern kill team circled around and fell upon Bad Krasha himself as he was busy gloating over a heap of dead Tyranid creatures. The fight was brutal and short. Bad Krasha's custom force field deflected the first shots, and he bellowed in surprise at these black-armored foes in his midst. He swung a massive, crackling power claw, killing one Marine by sheer brute force, but the others overwhelmed the warlord. Chainswords revved and lightning claws flashed, severing Bad Krash's head, still crowned with the crackling device, and snatching it up as a trophy. The kill teams then exfiltrated under heavy fire as every surviving orc in the area converged on them with furious bellows. Yet the Deathwatch had achieved their goal. With Bad Krash's demise and his synapse-disrupting contraption removed, the war between orcs and tyrannids resumed its natural, even footing, likely to drag on with mutual high casualties for a long, long time. The orc crown device, fused to that severed head, was spirited away to Watch Fortress laboratories for study, lest it fall into anyone else's hands. Perhaps one day it might even be used by the Imperium against the Tyranids, though the tech priests would likely have migraines attempting to decipher the mech's ramshackle genius. Kryptman's Gambit had been carried out by the hands of the Deathwatch, though Kryptman himself was now a pariah in the eyes of the Inquisition. To those fighting on the fringes, he was something of an unsung hero who'd bought the Imperium precious breathing room. The Deathwatch continued to monitor Octarius from afar, occasionally thinning any Tyranid splinter that tried to escape, or quietly eliminating any orc warband that looked likely to win too decisively. Let the alien fight alien, and the Deathwatch would ensure neither side gained the upper hand. Twilight of the 41st Millennium. As the 41st millennium neared its end, the galaxy only grew more tumultuous. The Deathwatch found itself pushed to the absolute limit, facing a rapid escalation on all fronts. Necron dynasties were awakening at an alarming rate, stirring in tomb worlds long guarded by lonely watch stations at the galaxy's edge. The Tau Empire, young but bold, launched its Third Sphere expansion, aggressively seizing Imperial colonies. The Deathwatch near the Damocles Gulf suddenly found themselves systematically targeting Tau commanders, advisors, and prototype weapons to slow the technologically advanced xenos. In one daring operation, a kill team raided the Farsight enclaves, breakaway Tau territories, while the legendary Commander Farsight was away fighting the Imperium elsewhere. The Deathwatch strike caused considerable damage and confusion in the Enclave's command structure before the enraged Farsight himself rushed back, vengeance in his heart. By then, the Deathwatch were gone like ghosts. Even the insidious, shadowy Hrood, a Xenos race that travels in migrating infestations, bringing entropy and time distortion in their wake, rose as a threat anew. On the shrine world of Damhal, an entire Hrood migration spilled out of the depths, overrunning the catacombs beneath holy basilicas and unleashing their temporal decay fields. The Mordian Iron Guard deployed regiments, only for those proud human soldiers to crumble into aged husks within hours, their lifespans devoured by the Hrood's chronophagic aura. A company of Sons of Medusa Space Marines in gleaming green power armor marched in, and even they, mighty Astartes, found themselves rapidly weathering and weakening, eventually succumbing as their power armor turned to rust around their withered forms. In response, the Deathwatch mobilized an unprecedented force, 2 full watch companies from a fortress called Keep Extremis, accompanied by no fewer than 8 ancient dreadnoughts, heroes of bygone eras, entombed in walking sarcophagi. These venerable warriors, some of whom had served since the Horus Heresy, volunteered for this mission knowing full well it could be their last. Clad in thick adamantium and ceramite, their dreadnought bodies could resist the Hrood's effects longer than living flesh. The assault on the Hrood Warren was spearheaded by these dreadnoughts, with squads of Deathwatch Marines following in tight formation behind each metal giant, using their bulk for cover. The Hrood tunnels were a nightmare, darkness made tangible, tendrils of blackness that sapped the vitality from anything near. Bolter fire lit up the black in staccato flashes. The Hrood themselves were skittering, half-seen shapes, melting into cracks in reality. They projected waves of temporal distortion. Men in mid-stride would suddenly lurch as if decades of gravity weighed on them. It was the dreadnoughts, those ancients, who turned the tide. 8 mighty behemoths forged onward through the maze, largely indifferent to the Hrood's entropic aura, while the accompanying Marines covered flanks and burned clusters of Hrood larvae in alcoves. The dreadnoughts pushed to the central nest and let loose with cleansing flame and plasma. One by one, the Hrood leaders, withered psychers generating the worst of the temporal fields, were cornered and cut down by power fists and melta blasts. The tunnels, finally, were rigged with charges and collapsed, entombing what remained of the xenos. Victory was won, but at a steep price. When the battle was over, the Deathwatch recovered their dreadnoughts, but found only silence. All 8 stood motionless, their once gleaming black and silver armor now dull and corroded. Tech Marines pried open their sarcophagi to find nothing but dust within. The honored ancients' biological remains had disintegrated, all life stolen by the Hrood, even as they triumphed. Those venerable heroes had knowingly walked into their final sunset to ensure the younger brothers could complete the mission. The Marines present knelt in reverence at their sacrifice. Their names were etched into the Hall of Heroes on that watch fortress, and their empty adamantium shells placed as eternal sentinels in the chapel. The surviving Deathwatch could only console themselves that the Hrood infestation was purged root and stem, a victory purchased by timeless courage. As if all that were not enough, the Dark Eldar, Drukhari, grew emboldened in the time of ending. The breakdown of central authority and the disruption of warp travel left many worlds isolated, ripe for plunder. The Drukhari preyed like jackals on scores of undefended colonies. Deathwatch kill teams found themselves stretched thin, racing in their Corvus Black Star dropships from world to world on what became known as Onyx patrols, trying to intercept raiders wherever possible. Many times they arrived only to find cities turned into charnel houses, with thousands of humans taken as slaves or experimental playthings. The Space Marines' blood boiled at such atrocities, and they retaliated fiercely whenever they managed to catch the Drukhari in action. In one instance, they boarded a Drukhari raider mid-escape, slaughtering the Kabbalite warriors on deck and seizing back 100 terrified captives before blowing the skimmer out of the sky. However, the Drukhari are slippery and their webway portals unpredictable. The Deathwatch had to adapt beyond simple reaction. In the later years, some Watchmasters instituted a strategy called Weapons of Wisdom. Instead of only fighting directly, kill teams were sent as instructors to dozens of Imperial worlds to train local forces in anti-Xenos doctrine. These Marines, towering over the mortal soldiers they drilled, spent weeks teaching planetary defense forces, PDF militias, and even select Astra Militarum regiments how to better resist alien threats. They taught marksmanship techniques for shooting down Eldar skimmers, field tactics for containing Genestealer cult uprisings, methods to counter Tau battlesuit assaults, and how to fortify positions against Orc shock attacks. Essentially, the Deathwatch helped create auxiliary Xeno-hunter units across the Imperium, a force multiplier necessary to hold the line where the Deathwatch itself could not be present. And then, the galaxy itself cracked in two. The Great Rift and the Indomitus Crusade. In the last hours of EM 41, Abaddon, the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade, culminated in the fall of Cadia. Cadia, the fortress world that barred the way out of the Eye of Terror, was destroyed utterly. In the cataclysm that followed, reality itself was rent asunder. The Cicatrix Maledictum, also called the Great Rift, tore across the galaxy, a vast wound in space-time dividing the Imperium into two halves. One half, the Imperium Nihilus, the Dark Imperium, was left largely cut off from Terra's light, plunged into warp storms and almost permanent darkness. For the Deathwatch, this was perhaps the direst test of their Long Vigil yet. Many watch fortresses suddenly found themselves alone in the dark. Communication between fortresses failed or became sporadic at best. Some were swallowed by warp storms entirely, inundated by demonic incursions they were ill-prepared to face. For the Deathwatch's focus had always been aliens, not chaos, though a bolter round kills a demon as well as a xeno. Other fortresses located in Imperium Nihilus had to face the reality that reinforcements from Segmentum Solar might never come. The flow of new recruits from chapters on the far side of the rift dwindled to nothing. Each fortress in the Dark Imperium had to become self-sufficient, recruiting from whatever local Astartes chapters were nearby, if any could even make the journey, or making do with the brothers they had even as casualties mounted. Despite this, there was no thought of giving up the fight. Watchmasters in Imperium Nihilus gathered their remaining kill teams and made hard choices, prioritizing only the most dire threats as they simply could not respond to everything anymore. There are accounts from Watch Fortress Excalibris in a region called the Crucible of Malice. Under simultaneous pressure from Drukhari raiders, Necron legions stirring in nearby systems, and Hrud infestations in the underpaths of hive cities, the garrison fought battle after battle without rest. At one point, a watch captain of Excalibris penned a final message to be sent via astropath if possible.
Though our vigil may soon end in death, we will exact such a toll that our successors, if any, shall find naught but ashes of the Xenos in our wake.
It didn't come to that extreme. Barely. Excalibris endured, but only by the narrowest margin and thanks to creative tactics, like leveraging rival Xenos against each other much as Kryptman did, and using their fortresses' automated defenses to compensate for lack of manpower. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out in various forms. The Long Vigil became an almost desperate holding action. The Deathwatch would stand, even if all stars went out. Salvation and relief came with the return of something the Deathwatch had not had for 10,000 years, a Primarch. Robute Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, was resurrected and took command of a shattered Imperium. Launching the mighty Indomitus Crusade, he pushed forth fleets and armies to relieve besieged worlds and reunite the sundered realm. Knowing the value of the Deathwatch, Guilliman made a bold decision as part of the Ultima founding. He allocated a significant portion of the newly created Primaris Space Marines to reinforce the Deathwatch specifically. These Primaris were a new breed of Astartes, engineered by Archmagos Belisarius Kol, taller, more resilient, with further enhancements that made them even more potent in battle. For the first time, whole companies of Space Marines were raised and then sent directly to Watch Fortresses as their new home. They arrived as blank slate Deathwatch recruits. Some had never served in any chapter, having been created in Kol's laboratories and trained in neutral indoctrination camps. Others were drawn from existing chapters' Primaris contingents, offered up willingly by those chapters honoring the old treaties. On Thalassa Prime, Watchmaster Mordelay, the humorless yet brilliant commander who had long led the Ultramarines Sector Deathwatch, was given the honor of integrating the Primaris first. He convened his veteran captains and remarked on the peculiar sight: strike cruisers bearing no chapter colors beyond the Inquisition's sigil, offloading hundreds of fresh, unscarred Primaris Marines in Mark X armor painted black. These were not seconded from a chapter. They were created to be Deathwatch from the start. Some traditionalists within the Deathwatch were wary. Would these newcomers understand the ways of the Long Vigil? They had not been plucked from existing brotherhoods with years of battle experience. They were new forged blades. Mordelay devised new kill team configurations to make best use of them. the Fortis kill team, mixing Primaris of different specializations, intercessors, hellblasters, etc., into a flexible unit. He also recognized that Primaris units had new capabilities, such as Inceptor jump troops and River infiltrators. So he created all Primaris kill team variants, like Indomitus squads, heavy armor Primaris with autobolt rifles and plasma incinerators, and Spectrus squads, Primaris, infiltrators and Rivers for stealth, to deploy where their specific skills were needed. Meanwhile, across the Great Rift in the besieged Imperium Nihilus, other Watchmasters had to make do with what they had. Some received reinforcements from Guilliman's crusade belatedly, others had none, and instead retasked veteran Firstborn Deathwatch to act as mentors to locally raised Primaris. The integration wasn't always seamless. Minor frictions arose between battle-hardened Firstborn sergeants and the eager Primaris neophytes who, despite their superior size, lacked comparable experience. But necessity forged unity. In time, the Primaris proved their worth amply. One storied moment came on the world of Katok. There, several kill teams from Watch Station Haltmote found themselves trapped between awakening Necron legions and a force of traitor Chaos Marines, Emperor's children, who sought to exploit the chaos. The Deathwatch fought valiantly, but they were heavily outnumbered and low on ammunition. They fortified a ruined hab block and prepared to sell their lives dearly, determined to take as many xenos and heretics with them as possible. Just as all hope seemed lost, thunder rippled through the sky. Drop pods and grav chutes delivered a striking force of fresh Primaris battle brothers, clad in the black of the Deathwatch, directly into the fray. They were warriors of the Indomitus Crusade, dispatched as emergency reinforcements. At their head was a towering Primaris watch captain, his armor trimmed with silver and heraldry of both the Deathwatch and Ultramar.
"Deathwatch, cleanse and burn!"
he roared, firing a volley from his autobolt rifle as he landed. The embattled veteran Marines, already on the ground, rallied at the sight of these reinforcements. The Necrons, much to their surprise, found themselves outflanked, and their resurrection nodes targeted by precise Hellblaster plasma fire, disrupting their ability to self-repair. The traitor Astartes, who had been moments away from overrunning the defenders, now faced a sudden counterattack by intercessors and aggressors appearing on their flanks. A fierce melee erupted, but now the momentum had shifted. Within hours, the Necrons were forced to phase out and retreat to their tombs, and the Emperor's children, deprived of their prize and pummeled from multiple sides, withdrew through a warp rift. After the battle, a grizzled Firstborn veteran clasped arms with the Primaris captain.
"We thought we were alone,"
the older Marine admitted. The Primaris, nearly a head taller, removed his helmet to reveal a noble, unscarred face.
"The Emperor and the Lord Guilliman sent us,"
he replied firmly.
"The Long Vigil must not fail. Not here, not anywhere."
It was a moment of hope and renewal. The shield that slays had been reforged, stronger than ever. In the Indomitus era that followed, the Deathwatch embraced the Primaris infusion wholeheartedly. With new blood bolstering their ranks, they took the fight to the Xenos with renewed vigor. New tactics emerged, mixing classic veterans and Primaris in hybrid teams, employing the Primaris' enhanced range and durability alongside the specialists of old. They found that Primaris Marines' improved physiology allowed for even more aggressive strategies. For instance, combined strike forces of jump pack inceptors and veteran Vanguard Assault Marines executed daring decapitation raids, raining plasma death from above, then dropping directly into the heart of enemy command formations to eliminate Xenos leaders in 1-2 punches that left alien armies confused and leaderless. Threats persisted, of course. Even as the Indomitus Crusade fought to restore order, bizarre multi-faction wars erupted. In the Damocles Gulf, an insane conflict saw Tzeentchian demon hosts, Tyrannid splinter fleets, Tau expansion forces, and Imperial crusaders, all colliding in a shifting patchwork of battle. Amidst this maelstrom, the kill teams of Watch Fortress Eye of Damocles reaped a great tally from the Xenos combatants. They combined spearhead strikes from Primaris Inceptor squads with gunship-mounted Purgatus kill teams, units equipped to cleanse and burn, to eliminate alien war leaders one by one, leaving their armies floundering in chaos. On one day of carnage, a Deathwatch combat sortie managed to assassinate a Tau commander, a Tyrannid neurothrope, and a rampaging Orc Weirdboy war leader within hours of each other, each kill sowing further confusion among the Xenos and tipping the scales in the Imperium's favor. There were also cases where radical Inquisitors took gambits similar to Kryptman's, even in this new age. One Inquisitor, Balfus Bale, used cobbled-together xenotech devices to navigate the turbulent warp storms of the Dark Imperium safely. His ship, the Castarsi, delivered the Deathwatch to the besieged world of Tanatha's Fall, just in time to confront an invading Tau force. However, during the fighting, Xenos forces boarded Bale's ship, and the Deathwatch were compelled to destroy it, rather than allow the ingenious Tau Earthcast to capture and reverse-engineer its warp navigation secrets. Bale went down with his vessel, willingly, ordering the Marines to fire torpedoes into the drive core.
Better death than dishonor or discovery,
he said, moments before the ship erupted in a warp-fueled fireball that consumed a Tau boarding craft along with it. The strain on relationships with some Adeptus Astartes chapters became apparent during this time of unprecedented need. Many chapter masters, facing apocalyptic wars on their own turf, formally petitioned the Deathwatch to release their sons back to their chapters. They argued that with the galaxy on fire, they needed every veteran back home. Some Watchmasters, sympathetic, complied if a chapter was truly on the brink, releasing their Deathwatch veterans to return, in some cases still clad in black and still bound by the oath of secrecy, essentially serving as embedded xenofighting specialists within their parent chapter's ranks. Other Watchmasters refused, responding with counter-demands for fresh reinforcements instead, or simply ignoring the requests. This led to dangerously strained relations. It is rumored that a few chapters, the Marines' malevolent and certain unforgiving successors, nearly came to blows with Deathwatch liaisons over these disagreements. Cooler heads prevailed, but it was a reminder that the Deathwatch walks a delicate line. They rely on the goodwill of all chapters, even as they ask those chapters to part with their best warriors indefinitely. One storied clash of wills did occur, albeit not between the Deathwatch and a chapter, but between the Deathwatch and one of the galaxy's most legendary Xenos leaders. In the final year of M41, amidst the galaxy-wide chaos, Watch Captain Artemis, the same Mortifactor's captain who had become a living icon of the Deathwatch, found himself face-to-face with Eldrad Ulthran, the chief farseer of Craftworld Ulthwé. Eldrad was attempting a bold plan, using arcane rituals on the crystal moon of Koharia in the Port Demesnus system. He sought to fully awaken the nascent Eldar god of the dead, Inad. If successful, this could potentially destroy Slaanesh and save the Eldar from their doom, but it might also unleash uncontrolled warp energy or cause unforeseeable changes in the balance of power. The Ordo Xenos deemed it too dangerous to allow. Artemis and a crack kill team were sent to disrupt the ritual. Under the eerie glow of Koharia's colossal crystal formations, Eldrad and his coven of warlocks chanted around a circle of spirit stones. Phantom images of the Eldar god flickered in the air. Just then, bolt rounds whined through the crystals, shattering two spirit conduits. Eldrad's bodyguard of Wraithguard and Howling Banshees moved to engage as Artemis and his team broke from cover. A savage battle erupted amid the crystalline spires. Artemis cleaved through a Wraithguard construct with his power sword, then ducked just in time as an Eldar Witchblade whistled past his helm. All around, reality itself fluctuated from the half-formed god's stirrings. Some Deathwatch Marines found their reactions supernaturally slowed. Others experienced visions of ghosts tugging at their minds. Still, they pressed on. Artemis caught sight of Eldrad at the ritual's center and charged. Eldrad, deep in concentration, noticed the Space Marine too late. Artemis smashed into the Farseer with his storm shield, knocking the ancient Eldar off balance and interrupting his chant. Eldrad's eyes flashed with anger. With a gesture, he unleashed a psychic blast that sent Artemis skidding back, armor crackling with eldritch energy.
Monkey,
Eldrad spat, using the Eldar word for human.
you meddle in designs far beyond your ken. I do this not just for my people, but to thwart the true enemy.
Artemis rose to his feet, bracing himself.
I care not for your excuses, Xenos Witch. Stand down or be put down.
All around them, Eldar and Deathwatch struggled. The ritual was faltering. Without Eldrad's focus, Inayad could not fully manifest. Sensing defeat, Eldrad's lips curled in bitterness. He let loose one more burst of psychic lightning, which Artemis blocked with his shield as he advanced step by step. Before Artemis could strike the killing blow, a new presence intervened, Ivrain, the emissary of Inayad and leader of the newly formed Inari, appeared through a webway gate with her own allies. They pulled Eldrad to safety in a whirlwind of acrobatic strikes and psychic smoke. Artemis felled one of Ivrain's incubi guards, but in the next moment, Eldrad and his followers vanished into the webway. The ritual site left in ruin. Artemis had thwarted Eldrad's designs, at least partially. Unbeknownst to him, the Eldar's actions still triggered Inayad's birth in a different way. The Deathwatch team withdrew as the crystal moon began to crack from the warp energy backlash. They had prevented a full awakening of an alien god, though inadvertently they had set in motion events that would create the Inari, a new Eldar faction. Such is the murky nature of the 41st millennium's end. Victories and unintended consequences are often intertwined. Finally, as if to drive home how precarious humanity's situation had become, the 13th Black Crusade's climax at Cadia did more than create the Great Rift. It also unleashed a chaos assault across the galaxy that even the Deathwatch could not ignore. Traditionally, fighting chaos is the purview of other forces, Grey Knights, Astra Militarum, etc., but when demonic legions and traitor marines began assailing worlds already beset by xenos, the Deathwatch did not stand idle. At Watch Fortress Eternus in the Nachmund Gauntlet, for example, kill teams battled not only a Necron incursion, but simultaneously defended their stations from a demonic onslaught spilling from a nearby warp rift. They improvised using banned xenotech and whatever means necessary to banish the demons, even as they continued to hold off the Necrons, a testament to their adaptability and resolve. In the aftermath of Cadia's fall, many watch fortresses were stranded in the darkness of Imperium Nihilus, beyond the guiding light of the Astronomicon. Yet reports indicate that none simply gave up. One message fragment from Watchmaster Valens of Fort Excalibris reads,
"We stand alone in the dark, but we stand. We have each other and the Emperor's mandate. If this is to be our end, we will make it a worthy one."
Such was the attitude of the Deathwatch in that dark time. And then a ray of hope. Gilliman's Indomitus Crusade reached many of these isolated fortresses, bringing relief and new directives. Gilliman himself decreed the Ultimaris Decree. Entire chapters worth of Primaris reinforcements, along with new war gear designed by Call, were sent to bolster the Deathwatch where they were most hard-pressed. It is said that in a grand ceremony on Terra, amidst the rebuilding after the Rift's emergence, Guilliman addressed a gathering of Watch commanders, acknowledging the vital role they play.
In this new age of terror, we need the Watchmen in the dark more than ever. To you, the Deathwatch, I give what aid I can. See that it is put to good use.
Conclusion. Now the saga of the Deathwatch stretches over 10,000 years, written in blood, faith, and unyielding vigilance. They are the Emperor's secret guardians, unsung heroes who toil in silence so that the billions of the Imperium can live one more day under the light of an ordinary sun. Each Deathwatch Marine knows he may die in obscurity, his deeds known only to a handful of Inquisitors and fellow veterans, perhaps never receiving glory or recognition outside the sealed archives of the Ordo Xenos. And yet, they do not waver. On a lonely outpost at the galaxy's edge, a handful of black-armored giants stand watch atop a silent watch station. Beyond their battlements lies a swirling nebula where alien eyes regard human space with predatory hunger. One Marine, perhaps a veteran Ultramarine or Imperial Fist, stands at a viewport, bolter at the ready, helmet mag-locked to his belt so he can see the stars with his own eyes. He remembers his homeworld faintly, the chapter halls he left behind, but feels no regret. This is where he is meant to be. Beside him stands a younger Primaris brother, newly blooded in a recent skirmish against metallic Necron wraiths. The younger Marine asks quietly,
Do you think it will ever end, brother? This long vigil of ours?
The older Deathwatch warrior is silent for a long time, the distant pinpricks of alien suns reflecting in his augmetic eye. He recalls a line from an old Grey Knight's oath that he once heard. Though it was written about battling demons, it rings true for their struggle against the Xenos as well. At last he replies, voice low and resolute,
We die, though our war is eternal. We are doomed, but we walk in darkness for as long as we draw breath. We are forgotten, yet the future is our gift to humanity.
He chambers around in his bolter and turns to his comrade.
If we must be the sacrifice so that mankind endures, so be it. The Emperor knows our names, even if no one else ever will.
Shoulder to shoulder, they continue their vigil, eyes scanning the cold void. Even as the galaxy burns and the night grows ever darker, the Deathwatch stands unyielding. They know that so long as a single kill team draws breath, no alien abomination will ever be safe. In the darkest night, they are the watchmen on the walls of reality, the shield that slays, the blade that strikes unseen. They will fight until the final star gutters out or the last Xenos is purged from the Emperor's realm, whichever fate destiny brings first. And if that final dark day should come, if all the armies of mankind are broken and the Imperial Eagle falls, you can be sure that somewhere, in some forgotten corner of a dying galaxy, the last battle brother of the Deathwatch will still be at his post, bolt gun in hand, fulfilling his oath. He will aim down the scope at the gibbering horrors closing in and snarl the creed of his order one last time.
Suffer not the alien to live.
For the long vigil continues now and always, and the Deathwatch will never falter.